overview that I'm going to be providing today is of the 10-day Nepal yoga and Buddhism pilgrimage that we've been doing since 2010. So I have personally done that one 10 times now, um, and I never grow tired of it. It's just an amazing experience. But in addition to that, I started offering other options. So I'll kind of just make sure you're all aware of those at the end. But what I'm going to share with you today goes over this 10 days. Hey, Matt. The 10 days that we spend in the Kathmandu Valley of Nepal. And Noel, who's here on the screen, is signed up for the next one, which will be March 17th to the 27th of next year with Tim Feldman. So that's coming up very soon. And the way that this is structured is very purposeful. And I kind of have broken it down this way for you. So we have this 10 days, and it's kind of in 3 phases or stages. The first phase is, I'm calling it focusing the mind. We start in an area that's actually quite chaotic and a bit of a shock to the system for a lot of folks, because it's just so different than what we're accustomed to in the Western world in terms of just how society functions and how traffic functions and just the environment that you're in. But the sort of epicenter of this first phase is in each epicenter is where we stay. It's like where our lodging is. And then it needs 3 phases. And then from that kind of epicenter, we explore out in that particular kind of area of the Kathmandu Valley. And the Kathmandu Valley is, it's quite large, and Kathmandu itself has grown tremendously in the past, 10, 20 years. So it's millions of people now, but it's not very highly developed. Nepal is one of the poorest countries in the world, financially. But I would say it's probably one of the richest countries in the world spiritually. So in my book, they're far ahead of everybody else. And this valley is kind of the temperate part of Nepal. Much of Nepal is mountainous and is sandwiched between China and India, and it's very thin and long, and so you're like in this valley, and on a good day when the air is clear, no matter which direction you look, you see mountains, and sometimes even snow peaks. And what's so different feeling about that too is that you may have been to Colorado. I've been to Colorado many times, and we have the Rocky Mountains, and they're big, but these make those feel like hills. And so when you see the snow peaks in Nepal, it's kind of like, whoa. I mean, they're like, you kind of understand like the sacred lore of the Himalayas, the sort of enlightenment, sort of meditative side of it, because they're just so big and majestic. It's very awe-inspiring.
Do the Himalayas come down that far, or?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Like, Nepal is like this thin country, and the mountains run the length of it at the top, and it's like quite it's the bulk of the country, it's this mountain. So, this range of mountains. And anywho, so you have that kind of dynamic, and you come into this area, and the sort of epicenter of this first phase is a place called Swayambhunath, and sometimes people call it the monkey stupa because there's a lot of monkeys that hang out all around the stupa. And these stupas that I'm referring to in Kathmandu are they're ancient places of practice that are highly sacred for Buddhists, but also Hindus. In particular, Swayambanath. Swayambanath is very much, it's like the main place for practice and for taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, for Newar Buddhists. So one of the things that's really interesting about Nepal, this part of the world, is that it has its own native Buddhism, which is called Newar Buddhism. And it is a form of Vajrayana, which is a form of Mahayana. So when you look at Buddhism overall, you've got the kind of foundational school, which is often today referred to as Theravada, and then you have the Mahayana, which is, it kind of builds on the foundational school and adds this altruistic element. The Bodhisattva concept becomes very important, where one commits themselves to this path of becoming, like aspiring to become a Bodhisattva, which is a being whose primary objective is to support others in becoming enlightened and being free from suffering and experiencing happiness.
So the baseline doesn't.
It's not as no. It's much more focused on your own individual liberation. Yeah. Not that that's good or bad. It's just like the difference in how it's evolved. But so Vajrayana is this offshoot of Mahayana, which incorporates tantric practices, and which is the main form of Buddhism in Tibet. And what happened is that when China invaded Tibet, and many of the Tibetan monks and families were forced to flee, they ended up in Nepal and India. And so this area in the Kathmandu Valley, especially around Bodhanath, which is our second phase, our second place where we stay, became a place of refuge where they live for many Tibetan Buddhists. And now, today, there are more than 50 monasteries that surround Bodhanath Stupa, and about 40 to 50,000 Tibetans live there. So it's when you go to Bodhanath, you're basically entering like a little Tibetan village, Tibetan enclave. But Swayambanath is different than that. Swayambanath is much more local. It's important to Tibetan Buddhists, but it's most important for Newar Buddhists. And these stupas are huge. Like Swayambanath is up on a hill, and you can see it from various vantage points sometimes within the city. So it sits up atop this hill, and to get there, you have to go up a lot of stairs, and it's a whole like crazy experience with monkeys and so forth. Oh, look, my hand is up because Zoom recognizes these things now. Okay, so we start out at Swayambanath, then we spend some 3 to 4 days there, usually 3. Then we move over to Bodhanath, which is the Tibetan enclave, and you really get immersed in the Tibetan Buddhist practices there. One of the things that I absolutely love about being in this place, and this goes for Kathmandu in general, but especially the places where we hang out, is that you are surrounded by people who are immersed in various ways in their Dharma practice. And so it's very eye-opening because you start to see all the various forms of Dharma practice that are out there. We kind of get very, often in the West, like we get very focused on asana, for example, as practice, or sitting on a cushion as practice. But then you go there and you see that there's a lot of other rituals, walking practices, mantra practices, all sorts of other things. Music even becomes involved that they do that are still considered to be Dharma practices. So it's very cool that way. So we go phase 1, Swambhu, phase 2, Bodha, and then phase 3, we kind of leave. So in phase 2, you're like really getting immersed. It's like, that's the thing about Tibetan Buddhism too, is that you don't try to remove yourself from the world. You go into the world and use everything to support meditation practice. Then what we do is we go, okay, everybody kind of needs a little break from this. We need some fresh air. We need some space. So we actually create that space. And this is part of how it's designed, is to leave the craziness and go up into the foothills of the Himalayas. So we don't go very high, but it's higher. Kathmandu is already at like 4,000 feet. And then we go up to maybe 5,000 feet when we go up to Namo Buddha. And so this is kind of the opening the mind section. It's where we give people some time to reflect on their experience and kind of let it digest, because it's a lot. It's a very big experience for folks to do this. So when you come into Kathmandu, we pick you up at the airport and we start off around Swayambhu, and the closest sort of neighborhood that is really, well, there's Swambhu, and then there's this neighborhood called Tamel. And Tamel is often referred to as the backpackers district. And you see, it's the reason being is that there are a lot of Western and European backpacker folks that hang out in this area, because you can come into Tamel and they sell anything that you would need for trekking. So that's kind of what it's known for, but it's just shop after shop in parts of Tamel that actually sell real North Face and real Marmot and real Patagonia, but then they have a lot of knockoffs. So you can be in this area. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of crazy. You can see from this photo, the one on the left it's what I mean by sort of the chaos and the hectic nature of this area. Even the wiring is kind of like wacko. People are like, holy moly, what is going on? There's just wires everywhere. But you have all sorts of transportation happening. This is kind of more in the local part of Tamel, where it's a very Hindu area. There's a lot of shopping and a lot of puja shopping. So people go here to get the stuff that they need for their pujas, which are like the religious ceremonies that are done with flowers and fire and all sorts of things. What you see there, just to the right in that photo, is a temple. So another thing that's really cool about Kathmandu is that you can literally trip on a temple or something that is considered sacred, because even when there's an upcropping, in the sidewalk, someone might paint that red and call it a Shiva Lingam, like put flowers around it. So, but this is an example of an actual temple that is in the traditional Newar style. So it has these multi-level roof, a sort of pagoda kind of thing. It's really, really cool, and you see those all around.
What's that hanging down? It looks like those ribbons.
Coming down the side, yeah, it is kind of like a gold-plated sort of ribbon. I'm really not sure what the significance of it is, but these things are so elaborate. And you'll see that in some of the pictures to come. Like, sometimes you're just like, whoa, I mean, it's a lot to take in when you go into these places. To the right is a photo that's taken within, so in Kathmandu there are 3 ancient kingdoms. So you have the kingdom of Kathmandu, kingdom of Lalitpur, or more modern days called Patan, and then the kingdom of Bhaktapur. So in ancient times, these kingdoms were 3 sort of central places within the Kathmandu Valley, and they were separated by fields. I mean, and it took, they weren't, nowadays it takes 45 minutes to get across town from one to the other, but of course at one time it would have taken much longer. So you had these 3 kingdoms that are still today like preserved and celebrated and places, major tourist destinations, and they are UNESCO World Heritage Sites. So this one on the right, that's a photo kind of through the main drag of the Kathmandu kingdom, which is really cool.
Were these kingdoms in the earlier times, did they war against each other, or were they, I don't know,
I have not
noble
heard
families?
stories of war between them, but they had some really amazing traditions. You can see this when we go. You would enter. They're gated. There's I'll show you one of the gates coming up in a photo. But you would enter through the gate, and they had various stages you would go through. Bathing, paying taxes, different things before you actually were admitted entrance into the kingdom. So, pretty organized. All right, and so just to share, with the first place that we stay is called Hotel Vajra, and it's actually quite beautiful. Oh, there's the video. So on the right, so this is an old hotel. We have chosen these hotels very purposely. There are very fancy places to stay in Kathmandu now, Hyatts and Marriotts and Four Seasons and whatnot. But we want to stay somewhere so people can be comfortable, of course. But we also want to we've chosen places that are in the midst of this spiritual practice and energy. So I've had people say well, why don't you make it 5-star and stay at the Hyatt? And I'm like, we're not doing this to escape and pretend like we're back in the US. You know what I mean? It's and when I first started going in 2010, it's changed a lot. It's evolved and there's been a lot of quote unquote progress. When I first started going, you would only have electricity for 4 hours a day. And you weren't even really sure when that would be. So, now, you have consistent electricity. You have Wi-Fi pretty much everywhere you go. The Wi-Fi might not be great, but in many places it's pretty good. But anyway, so there's a lot more amenities. It's a lot more modern than it used to be. But I don't like this escape that it provides from our norm, but not trying to escape back into our norms. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you see on the right is the yoga hall, and this is one of the big reasons why we keep staying in this place, because they don't have the best service in the world, but it's a great place. It's a beautiful place. It's right near Swayambhu, and the yoga room looks like this. And finding yoga spaces in Kathmandu is not the easiest thing. There's actually very few yoga studios. Sometimes people think, oh, you go to Nepal and there'll be yoga studios, or you go to India and they're not. That's not how it really works there. So this room is absolutely gorgeous. You can see from the ceiling, and it's got these light windows all around. It's just a really great place to practice. And then this little clip just kind of gives you a snippet of how the There's a lot of green, a lot of bricks. Bricks are the typical form construction material that's used. And so all around Kathmandu there are brick making factories, which is one of the reasons that it's roots. So as Kathmandu has grown, the more bricks, so it's kind of something about that. But as you can see, it's got a lot of character.
Same with those in Afghanistan, they have a lot of the
Yes.
making factories and
It really, yeah. Okay, so that's a little bit about where we stay. And then just a little bit more about Swayambhu. So this is a collage of photos. When you stand outside the yoga room in the morning, this is what you see. You look into the distance and there's Swayambhu up on the hill. And it's just it's hard to capture. I was actually pretty glad to get this photo. And when you really look at this photo, it has this very glowing effect, which is kind of cool. But that's what you see from the hotel. And then this is just, that's actually Kay and Jeremy, who are here in Nashville. They went with last trip. And this is kind of walking around the very base of the stupa, down at kind of the ground level. So beautiful. It's just surrounded by this beautiful wall. It's very decorative with these pagoda, stupa kind of things. It's prayer wheels. Every prayer wheel contains a scroll which has mantra inscribed on it, and the idea is that when you spin the prayer wheel, it activates the mantra and sends it out into the world. Often the mantra is Om Mani Padme Om, which is the mantra for love and compassion. Compassion and wisdom, I should say, but love is part of that. This is at the top, like this is when you're up there. This is the stupa here. It's really hard to get photos that like do it justice because it's quite large. But this is huge. This is huge. This is like an older sort of Indian Hindu architecture of some sort. I'm not at all an expert on that. These are called chaityas, so they're not stupas because what separates a chaitya from a stupa is that stupas actually contain relics, often pieces of the Buddha himself, Buddha Shakyamuni. Bits of bone or tooth are enshrined in the stupa, and it's that material substance of what was the Buddha that kind of gives it this charge. This is like going up, this is near the top of the steps. It's quite a steep climb to get up to the stupa, so you can see folks here. Let me move the screen so you can see that we're making our way up, and this is the stupa up at the top. This is a statue. I included this just because it's kind of interesting and it's cool to see in person. This is one of the earliest statues of the Buddha. The Buddha himself said, don't make statues of me. I don't want the image of me to be this thing that people worship. But 600 years later, they started doing it anyway. And it's helpful, if you approach it in the right way. But what is interesting about this is that they didn't know statue making. So it came from the Greeks. And so this statue of the Buddha is very unusual because, first of all, it's standing. Also, he's wearing a toga, and he has like a very Greek nose. It's got a lot of sort of the Greek influence, which is interesting. And then what's also cool is that you have Buddha here, you have Hanuman here. So sometimes people will ask me, like recently someone asked me, why is your logo Vaishnav? Because in the Yoga Shala Nashville logo, the thing in the center is the mark that Hanuman has on his forehead. And that mark is a symbol of his devotion to Ram. And I'm not Hindu or, I'm Buddhist, but Hanuman has always inspired me because of his devotion, his level of devotion, and his commitment to compassion. So, and also in Nepal, what's really cool is that you often do see this, you'll see Ganesh, you'll see Hanuman right there alongside Buddha. And you'll see Hindus and Buddhists practicing right alongside one another as well. It's really cool. This, very short video, but just to kind of give you another view of...
Where are we going, Vidar?
It's really cool.
Where are we going, Vidar?
Practice called Cory, walking meditation. You always keep the right side of your body toward the stupa, and also if you're going to spin the prayer wheel, you always do the right hand, the right side toward the stupa. So it kind of sets it up that way. Prayer flags are.
Where are we going, Vidar?
And then, while we're in this area, we take a trip to a place called Parping, which is kind of like a second big Tibetan area of this Kathmandu Valley. There are a lot of monasteries coming up there, and my heart guru, Chokini Rinpoche, has a monastery there. And at that monastery is something called the Asura Cave. And the Asura Cave is very important because Padmasambhava meditated there. So I'll get to that in just a second. This is This is Connie. She went on the last trip standing on a suspension bridge over a gorge, which we stop at on the way up. This gorge is very famous and important because it is said to have been created by Manjushri, who was the Bodhisattva of wisdom, who put down his sword to create the gorge and opened the Kathmandu Valley, because historically the Kathmandu Valley was underwater. And the only place that stood out of the water was Swayambhu. And then Manjushri drained the valley, drained the water, to create the valley. That's one account of how it was done. And one of the things that's really cool about this part of the world too is that we would call these things myth, and when we hear myth as Westerners, we usually think of it as not true, right? But there, is it? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Myth and history are kind of interwoven in this really beautiful and accepting, inspiring kind of way. On the right is when we get up to Parping, as we're going up to the Asura cave. This is just to show, I mean, this is a monastery here, and then there's this view out down toward the valley. So you see Kathmandu Valley, Kathmandu. And then there's also a giant statue of Padmasambhava. So Padmasambhava is, in Tibetan Buddhism, is kind of like the second Buddha. Some even consider him like, it is kind of, I want to say, sort of more important in terms of practice than Buddha Shakyamuni himself. Because Padmasambhava is the one who established Buddhism, or helped, he made it possible for Buddhism to be established in Tibet. The way he did that is that Padmasambhava originally was probably somewhere near, from Pakistan, Afghanistan kind of area. He was known for being a great yogi and being able to tame negative forces. And so when the king of Tibet, King Tristan Detson, was trying to establish Buddhism in Tibet, he was running into problems. His efforts were being messed up by political forces, by spirit forces. This is like a lot of folklore, a lot of stories around that. But Padmasambhava was recruited to come because what he did was he worked with these forces and said, okay, I'm going to give you a new job. So he didn't say, I'm going to kill you, or I'm going to destroy you, or I'm going to do away with you. He said, instead of trying to prevent this, how about if you protect it? So he turned these forces into Dharma protectors, which is a really cool thing. So sometimes in a lot of times you see very sort of ferocious looking images on the monasteries and within the monasteries. And these ferocious characters are the Dharma protectors. So they're wrathful deities, but they're using their wrath for good. And so when we get up there, and there's a bit of a climb for this one too. The theme of going uphill is kind of a constant in this experience. But we get up there, and then there's this cave where Padmasambhava is said to have meditated. So Vito's taking close that way, and then I'm turning around. The cave is in there. And so we go and we get to sit in the cave. And this area, this is a monastery. This is Sokinima Rinpoche's monastery. A lot of times there's a lot of monks and nuns around, and that was a shrine. And on it was a plaque of like Buddhist feet. It's a really cool experience going up here. And then the other place that we visit while we're staying around Swayambhu is Patan, which is one of the other old kingdoms. And it's quite majestic. It's got the biggest plaza. On the way to the plaza, which the plaza is here on the right. On the left, we stop at something called the Golden Temple. So this is inside the Golden Temple, which is just amazing, and very old, and very ornamented. And it's an example of a Newar Buddhist shrine, Newar Buddhist practice-based monastery. And these are central. They're inside the courtyards of homes, surrounded by homes, and they're taken care of by families. So a family will have the responsibility of keeping up these temples. It's really cool. This just happens to be one that's sort of the most ornate that people go to visit. It's called the Golden Temple. But the others are there, they're just private. The plaza of Patan it's so majestic. It's very long, maybe 5 or 6 football fields with these giant buildings, temples. And unfortunately, in 2015, the earthquake basically decimated this place. But they've already reconstructed to this extent. Like you see, there's still some construction going on, but a lot of it is finished, and it's amazing what they do. And this is also kind of part of the experience, is just seeing how they deal with the tragedy of an earthquake that basically destroys their homeland. And what they do is, they just rally. They see it as something that keeps renewal going. It keeps the craftsmanship alive. So because every 100 years or every 80 years, they know, like, oh, we're probably going to have to rebuild all this. And so when it happens, they save everything they can, stack the bricks, they number things, and then they reconstruct it using the original materials as much as they can. And then the craftsmen come in and recarve and refit new pieces where they need to. So it's really amazing.
When was this earthquake?
2015. It was March of 2015. I left like 2 days before.
When was this photograph?
I think this one is from 2022.
So they were still rebuilding. Were they
Yeah.
still rebuilding when you were?
On this last trip, there was just a little bit of construction happening, but mostly it's finished.
So when I went in 2008, there had recently been an earthquake, and they were rebuilding.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, they have saved for them.
They have.
so it must be really frustrating, but I guess they see it as devotional practice,
Yeah, and just
or maybe they're getting away for it instead of.
well, there's that.
Job.
It's like, and they're. I think that their understanding and relationship with impermanence is pretty strong. It helps them cope with these things. There was an earthquake, while I was there this last trip. We were trekking, and I woke up in the morning, and there was all this hubbub about earthquake, and I'm like, what? And I didn't even feel anything. It was about 200 miles away, so it was pretty devastating. Okay, and then we go to Pashupatinath, and this is kind of in between Bodhanath and Swayambhunath. It is one of the most sacred areas in the world for Hindus. It has importance to Buddhists as well, but it's a cremation place. It's kind of like the Varanasi, India of Nepal. And so this is like these photos are sort of these temples that we pass on the way to the cremation area. Here I am with a group just up top. It's just like the sunrise set. It's so beautiful. We used to go there in the evening because they have evening puja every night. So it's wild because you have this confluence of events. It's like people are being cremated, like literally bodies are burning, families are mourning, and they're going through this whole process. And there's on the other side, like back behind us, is one of the biggest and most important Shiva temples in the world, a Shiva temple complex. And so that's going on. Meanwhile, at dusk, after the sun goes down every night, they have this puja, which is like this big celebratory kind of celebration of light and life, and people come, and it's like a night out, So it's kind of wild, the juxtaposition. And then this is Lada. She was on the last trip. There's a lot of sadhus around there, and so some of them are shysters. Some of them are really nice. These were nice ones, and so we got some photos of her. This is walking down to that area. and what you see kind of lit up in the background is the Shiva temple. And then over here in this bottom picture as well, you can see the Shiva temple. It's really large, and then all around that is a complex of temples. And if you can't enter unless you're Hindu, but we can, from the other side, we can kind of stand up above and look down at it. It's over here, and we're up there, and you can kind of like observe and see the complex itself. But it's an amazing place. For Hindu people, they'll get up in the morning, leave their homes, walk or drive, go there to do their devotional practice. It's just like part of their morning routine, and then carry on with their day. Morning and or evening. And then this is the river that runs through, and the cremations are happening. They happen over here.
So just like in Varanasi, but those ghats with those ghats.
Yeah. Yeah. The burning ghats. And then we go to Bodhanath. And Bodhanath it's such a change. It's like, it's kind of enclosed. So you get a little bit of a step out of some of the chaos and the dirtiness and the dustiness of the actual city itself, and into this Tibetan Buddhist enclave area. The stupa itself sits in the middle, and it's very large, like the size of a city block, and then maybe bigger. And then there's shops and restaurants and monasteries all the way around it. It's sort of circular. It's in like, and if you look down at the stupa, it's in the shape of a mandala. This is within it, just some other photos. I love this bell. This bell is at the front of a monastery that sits right there on the stupa. You can see these big cauldrons of incense that are burning every morning. They start this up at about 5:30, 5 o'clock. They keep it going most of the day and into the evening. So the whole place is very fragrant. There's a lot of bells and pujas and just all kinds of things going on. This is my friend James. James has been co-hosting and doing these things with me since the beginning. And he's been living there at Boda for 20 years now. He grew up in Virginia, worked on Wall Street, ended up following our teacher and leaving that life and moving full-time to Kathmandu.
You notice that dog in the corner. Are there dogs everywhere?
Yeah.
And in the temples too?
Yeah, there are dogs all around. Street dogs abound. It's tough sometimes because sometimes they need help. But in large part, people take care of them in some form or fashion. And in the monasteries themselves, they usually do have dogs around. They're like the monastery dogs. They take care of them. Each of the neighborhoods has a street dog committee, gang, yeah. But also,
it's actually people in charge of.
Yeah, kind of like trying to tend to them, meet them, get them veterinary care.
Wow.
Yeah. Noelle, did you have any questions or anything?
No, I'm just enjoying listening and watching pictures.
Oh.
I'd like to hear your pronunciation because you've given us the itinerary, but I wasn't always sure how to pronounce these places.
Yeah. Yeah, and if anything comes up as we move along, feel free to just
Okay.
one there on that. Okay. Just more photos. You can kind of see here the shops and restaurants that surround. They're really cool. People in the morning and the evening, this is a major place for devotional practice. And one of the ways you do that is by circumambulating, walking around the stupa. Often you do it with mala beads, so chanting mantra, meditatively walking around 3, 7, 12 times, whatever. Some just keep doing it. You also see people prostrating all the way around. It's really cool. This is the restaurant we go to on the first night that we stay in Boda, and it's just a really fun place to go that first night because you get this view. It's on the rooftop and you have this view of the stupa. place. This is in the mornings. We stop before we go into the yogashala. We stop at a monastery and sit with the monks while they do their puja as a form of meditation. So we engage there, and this is a photo inside that monastery. Over here, there's a giant, like it's so cool because this little monastery from the outside it doesn't look like much at all, and then you like go in, and it's one of the kind of like guru of this monastery. He passed away, but he was highly revered, and so the monastery still has very very strong energy. And this Buddha is so unusual. It's sitting. You know, have you ever seen that? It's like sitting with its feet like this, and it's like in a chair. And it's huge. Like when you go up to it, you can't even see it until you get right up under there and then look up, and it's like 2 or 3 stories tall. It's really cool. This is the yogashala. When we're in Bodha, this is where we practice. It looks out at the stupa through those windows. It's amazing. That's my teacher, Tobatuku. And he comes, and we have 2 sessions with him where he sits and he just teaches and answers questions. And he's very open. He speaks English. Really, really wonderful teacher. He's the one I'm going on track with.
How did he become your teacher?
Well, in 2010, when I did this trip, my friend Marnie was the one who organized it. I inherited it from her. So she had it organized, and I just went as the yoga teacher. So it was my first time, didn't know anything. And I met him, because she had him give us teaching. And I just was really struck by him. There was something there, So I asked Marty at the end if I could go and sit, like, talk, have one-on-one time. And she arranged that, and he accepted me. I went to his room, and we sat, and we talked for quite a while. And then since that time, our relationship has just continued to grow. Every time I go, these days, it's like each time I go now, I spend more and more time with him. Talking, having lunch, having him teach me, having him, everything he does is like teaching. It's kind of amazing. Like you're just with him. Like Tim was with me this last trip, and he got to spend some time with just Tokatuko and I. And at the end, it's like, wow. It's like you're just having a conversation, but everything is like so insightful. And then he helps guide me with my practice. So it's really nice because his guru is my guru, Chokyampa Rinpoche, but the Chokyampa Rinpoche is very revered, has thousands of students all over the world, and so it's hard to get that kind of time with him. So it's really nice to have someone. And what he told me, Tokatuku, years ago, this is maybe 2017, our relationship started to deepen. And I asked him if he would be my guru. I was like, can I take refuge with you? And he said, no, you take refuge with my guru. He was like, I can't be your guru. I'm not that realized. I'm not that high yet, or whatever, you know what I mean? He's very honest, but he's also very humble. Like he is a Tolku, so he's a reincarnated Lama. He was identified at age 9 as a reincarnation, taken to the monastery, and he's been there ever since. And he's 47 or 48 now. But he said, I'll be your spiritual friend. And in Tibetan Buddhist world, that's kind of code for like, sort of like your guru teacher, but it's just a more humble way of thinking.
This is a yoga shop.
Well, yes, for us it is.
Okay. I was wondering why there's a yoga shop there.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, so years ago when we first started doing this, it was like it had a sign out front. It's like yoga, yoga, and it was like the guy who owned it was trying to make it like a yoga place, and there's rooms where people could stay and stuff. So then we met with him in 2017 and tried to get him to sell it to us or rent it to us, so we could just take it over, but he wouldn't do it. Then he kept trying, but he was failing. Like he wasn't getting much yoga traction. Like not much was happening there. And he was basically just kind of renting out the rooms to people. And so we would go and we would use it, like clean it up and use it. And there used to be a big Buddha in there. It's really cool. Then in 2022, during the pandemic, all of a sudden he decides he's going to turn it into a restaurant. He has lots of restaurants, this guy. So we show up and it's like there are tables and chairs and we're like, what? And new lights hanging down and stuff. Those green lights didn't used to be there. And I'm like, what is going on? So he still rents it to us. He uses it like a second dining room. It doesn't have to. So he pulls everything out for us to use it, and then we leave and put it back in. It's kind of crazy, but that's all.
Is he? Well, maybe we can talk about it later. I'm curious, but I'm kind of curious more generally, like about like what Tibetan Buddhist teachers, like your teacher, like what they think about modern postural yoga.
Oh, that's a good question. So,
Shaolin, there's a Tibetan Buddhist teacher there.
Right. So Tokotuku, we've had pretty at-length discussion about my practice in general and about Ashtanga. So he has some understanding of what it is and what we do. And what he told me, because I said to him at one point, I was like, do I need to stop practicing Ashtanga, or do I need to shift my emphasis like a lot more? No, keep doing it. It's great. Like it's right in line with what we're doing. It's it's just a form of meditation. You don't have to look at things like that. That's part of this. You want to start to look at everything as part of your practice and as opportunity for meditation. Yeah, really cool. It was very affirming. It's just like keep it up. So then, one thing that we do while we're in Bodha is we take a day trip and we go to a place called Nagi Gampa, which is a nunnery. So it's my teacher's, it's affiliated with, it's the female place, the female monastery. So it's up in the hills a little bit outside of the city. So we go to Nagi Gampa, and then from Nagi Gampa we take a hike to Pulahari, which is a monastery. So this is us. Oh my God, I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk through this without crying, but this is the nunnery monastery puja hall. This is one of my teachers. She's like one of the most important people in my life. Her name's Ani Gantara. She just radiates love and kindness. She's amazing. She's the head nun. And this is us. She just came in. We're greeting her. That's her telling everyone goodbye. I mean, she's amazing, and she doesn't speak much English. But Vidor, this is my friend Vidor. We have the same birthday, same year. We've been doing this together since 2010, and he can speak. They speak Nepali, so he translates for us when we sit with her. But it's just an amazing experience to have that time. This just shows folks on the hike. This is the place where we go, the monastery called Pulahari. It has multiple buildings. This is just one of them. It's a beautiful place. And we usually arrive there around sunset to get this really majestic kind of ending to the day. The hike is about 4 miles, like 3 hours. It's fun, it's beautiful. We go through pine forests. But the nunnery is such a great experience. They receive us, we sit, we have talks. They fix lunch for us. It's
Are the nuns identified when they were children also?
No. That hasn't become a thing, to my knowledge. That's an interesting question. That's a good question. So what has happened is female and males were treated differently, and still are to some extent. And over the past 10, 20 years especially, there's been a lot of movement toward kind of trying to equalize that. There didn't even used to be nunneries. Now the Buddha did have female adepts and bhikshunis, and like that was a thing. But in the Tibetan Buddhist world, there were abbots in more contemporary. One of them being the founder of this place, Nagi Gampa, who created the opportunity be a nunnery and for women to take formal practice. And so it's a lot of progress has been made, and the Dalai Lama has been part of that, but it's not there yet. This is we only have 7 minutes, so I gotta hurry. We also go to the third kingdom, Bhaktapur. It is amazing. That's one of the gates I was mentioning. So this is a gate into Bhaktapur. You see these big Tibetan snow lion tiger things that like guard. It's just gorgeous. I just love this photo because it just shows like an old school shop. Like you see a lot of these, just and they're colorful and there's so much more there than meets the eye. It's where traditionally people would get their wares. This is an awesome woman from the UK who went on the trip last March, just kind of hanging out on the street. But this is an example of what a street looks like in Bhaktapur. It's very ancient, very different. Bhaktapur is a lot of fun. It's a great place for like shopping and eating and just hanging out. So we take people here, kind of orient them, and then let them have free time to just roam. This is one of the main temples. It has 5 levels. It's quite a sight to behold. And it's guarded by, you see here up the stairs, there's these stone carved figures of animals and guardians of the temple. And then here's just an example of kind of the sort of street life and scene there in Bhaktapur. So Bhaktapur is just filled with, it is an ancient kingdom. It's also one of the wealthier areas of Kathmandu. So it's a little cleaner, it's a little more spacious, and these courtyards are quite large, so it's a real nice place to be. And then that's on our way to Nama Buddha. So Nama Buddha is the 3rd stage of the trip. Nama Buddha, and this just shows Jeff reclining, and we go out on a couple of hikes while we're there, and you get these views of the mountains. But Nama Buddha is very important in the Buddhist world because it is said that the Buddha, in his life prior to becoming Buddha Shakyamuni, he was a bodhisattva. He came across a mother tiger who was starving, and she had cubs. So the whole lot of them were starving. There was a drought at the time. And the Buddha made the ultimate act of sacrifice of selflessness by feeding himself to the tigers to keep them alive. And that is said to be his final act before being reborn as Buddha Shakyamuni. Yeah. So that Nama Buddha is in that place, and there's a monastery there today, which the abbot of that monastery was Thorongpa Rinpoche, who was the author of the book that we studied for the past several months in our Monday night sessions on compassion. He's an amazing teacher. He passed away recently. Last time I was there, they were having his funeral, for lack of a better word, that's not what they call it, but this whole ceremony, puja going on. And, it was quite a thing. A lot of Western students come back and things like that happen. Anywho, so Nama Buddha is there, and we stay at this place called Nama Buddha Resort, which is just awesome. It's like, I liken it to the Shire in The Hobbit. It's just nature everywhere, little buildings. There's small, medium, and large houses. The small ones are for a single person or a couple. The medium ones have 2 floors, and then the large houses are bigger. You can do 4 people in those. But they're just really cool. Set on this hill. It's organic. They grow most of the food that we eat there. It's really cool. The meals are amazing. So we stay here for a few days. This is the restaurant building here. This is the Shala over here. It's a separate little building. Really cool. The mountains are off in the distance here, snow peaks. And sometimes when the air is clear in the mornings, you get really good views, sometimes throughout the day, views of the snow peaks. And you can even see Everest way off in the distance. It's kind of doesn't look very big.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. So that's what's going. This is like on arrival. Jeremy's playing the guitar. We're hanging out, having tea. You know, it's just a really a night. We can do bonfires there. It's just a great place to be. This is inside the yogashala. This is morning breakfast. There's the shala over here. The breakfast, the meals there are just amazing. Very enjoyable place. Here's a view of the snow peaks. Yeah, I got an actually fairly clear photo. This is sunset. Or maybe that's sunrise. Because the sun comes up over here and it starts to shine on the mountain. And you start to see them light up. It's just amazing. So when I'm there, I always get up before the sun comes up. I mean, I always do anyway, but I go out, you know, so I can make sure I watch that. This is the monastery, Nama Buddha Monastery. It's on this hill. It's quite a complex, a lot of buildings. It's a really beautiful place. We take a hike to go there. This is like a picture of a village that we hiked through on the way back from Nama Buddha. There's a stupa back there in the distance, really cool stupa. What happened was that King Ashoka was in India, was a major advocate and benefactor for the spread of Buddhism, and there was a decree to build these stupas all around. So there's like 184 or something. I can't remember the number, but all right, and then we go back to Boda. This is a nighttime, very dark shot of Bodhanath. But you can see this is like a little bit higher up. So the street, the sidewalk is down here, goes all the way around, and then it used to be that you could walk in and go up onto the stupa. So at one point I even recorded a class from sitting. I was sitting up there. I think it's still on SoundCloud, but they don't let you do that anymore. You can still go in down here, but people you see these boards. You can't see it in this photo, but people do prostrations in there. And last time I was there, so there's this old man that I always go and visit. He has a little shop. I just love him. He has a little chihuahua. It's so cute. Reminds me of my old one. And he gave me this mullah, and he said, "This is the mullah that I used for 30 years when I did my prostrations at the stupa." That's so cool. So that's the 10 days. We've got the one coming up with 10. It's sold out. Then doing the trek with Topotuku right after that. There's still spaces for that. If anybody's interested, it's going to be just amazing. We're actually going to be with Topotuku trekking to his home village, which is near Mount Manaslu, which Manaslu is the 8th tallest mountain in the world. This trek is going to be just awesome.
Is that which one is that?
What's that?
Oh, the
March 31st to April 13th this year, or next year, sorry, 2024. And then I think I'm going to do one myself in October 2024, and then another one of these 10 days. And then the 12th to the 23rd and 24th is when I'm doing the Sharing Buddha's Journey tour, that's where we go up into India and go to the places where the Buddha was, where he gave his first teachings, then where he became enlightened, where he died, and where he was born. It's back into Nepal. It's a really amazing experience. And then I've added Jessica Stickler. We did Jivamukti teacher training together. She still teaches Jivamukti today in New York City. So kind of shifting, giving a non-Ashtanga option for folks. I'm going to do that next March. And then April 2025 is when we're going to do Bhutan.
Yeah, I'm gonna do
So. All right.
Since they sell out so quickly, when would someone reserve a spot for the April 2025?
Well, I already have a list of it's almost full.
Oh, really?
If all the people who told me that, what we're going to do is, I mean, if you want in, I'll just put you down on that list, and then as soon as we open registration, you'll get the first.
Oh, thank you. Almost, see, I almost missed out again.
Yeah, it's like people are really excited about that one. So. And the good news about